And we are live. Everyone, welcome to Charging Ahead, where we explore ideas, people, and technologies driving the future of mobility. Today, we are diving into one of the most complex and consequential questions in the automotive tech. Can we truly build connected cars without compromising on privacy, ownership, or trust? So, joining us today is someone who's not just asking the question, but building the answer actively. I'm thrilled to welcome Niclas Gyllenram, co-founder and CEO of AiDEN. So, AiDEN is reshaping the in-car service experience with a platform that puts drivers in control, empowers car makers, and makes privacy a product much more than just a policy. And backed by the recent 6.1 million in seed funding and working with partners like Here, Alert, and Mavi, AiDEN is building a layer that could become key to the connected car economy. In this conversation, we'll dig into big ideas, some hard trade-offs, and some bold predictions behind AiDEN and what it means for the future of cars, drivers, and data. Niclas, welcome.
Well,
Welcome,
thank you
Nicholas.
very much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. This is a big one for us, and we're so glad to have you here. So let's start at the top. So you started in the automotive industry a long time ago. It was I've checked your profiles and everything, and it says maybe 20 years ago you were already an engineering manager in Mitsubishi, and then you moved on to Volvo, where you ended up as director of software development. That's a huge title, actually. It's quite interesting to be speaking to someone of that caliber. And some time ago, more than 4 years ago, you left Volvo. But so I would ask you, was there a moment that made it clear that industry needs a clean slate approach?
Yes, well, first of all, I feel slightly embarrassed because you're racing me to the skies that much, but thank you very much anyway for the kind words. There were multiple moments where, at multiple times throughout my career, where I felt something needs to change because we're not really providing value to people, and the vehicles that we're building and spending hundreds of millions of dollars in developing aren't really providing the services they should. That was really, and that happened over and over and over again. And just before we founded AiDEN, the most recent proof point was when I was still at Volvo Cars and we were trying to connect them specifically with two different partner companies that we were working back then with. One was a large rental car company that wanted to be able to communicate with its cars and its customers in its cars, and the other was an insurance company where same thing really. They wanted to be able to communicate with the car and the customer, and there was no sensible, scalable way to do it. And actually, there was a third proof point as well, where we were, as Volvo, trying to build an integrated charging experience into the vehicle. And we ended up doing it with a company called ChargePoint, where they built an app. And even though that was successful in the sense that we, in the end, actually got a built-in charging experience, but it was not successful in the sense that it took way too much resources, both for ChargePoint and for Volvo, so it was just not scalable. And then when it comes to privacy, that was something that we thought from the beginning was something that you need to approach head on with transparency and really try to solve the problem of people not knowing what is happening with their data, which I think was pretty much the opposite to the approach taken by the industry at large, where it's instead something you try to shy away from, and because you don't know how to deal with it, probably.
Yeah, so this leads me actually to a talking point I wanted to raise. The in-car experience currently is a bit clunky when it comes to services. It's fragmented, it's slow, and I want to ask you, why do you think the industry let it get this bad?
Uh, this is something that I'm not sure I can answer because I think about it almost every day. I thought about it just last night because it's a problem that is bigger than just connected services. It's a problem of why, in my mind, I think the industry, the automotive industry, especially in the West, is, I think, doing the same mistakes that you've seen in other industries previously. It's the same mistakes that you saw in smartphones or phone industry, which led to the demise of Nokia and Ericsson, and it's just repeating itself all over, where for some reason large companies, instead of focusing their resources on really doing what they do best, they put up like walls and say nobody else can do something on our devices. We are the only ones that should do it, and we should do everything. And that has never ever been a great approach. And I like to say, and then people say, yeah, but Apple are great. Yes, Apple are great, but they don't do everything. And one of the key things there was that they opened up with the App Store, and suddenly you could get services in phones. Now, app stores and phones and cars are not the same, and that is the reason why app stores are not revolutionizing the auto industry in the same way.
We've seen
Yeah.
Xiaomi do good in automotive industry. So
I'm
they're
sorry?
making make apparel. Xiaomi is doing pretty good, right? With their
Yeah,
cars.
sure, sure. But the thing is, I think instead of taking the approach of trying to do as much as possible and do everything, you should take the approach of let's try to do as little as possible. Is there anything we can do, we can outsource to a supplier, then you should do it. And right now, I feel in the automotive industry that there's too much, too little focus on product and what you actually deliver to end customers, and way too much focus on platforms, which where and when you're building a platform, the customer is actually your own engineers. So suddenly you're building stuff for your own engineers instead of actually building stuff for your end consumers, the customers, the people actually paying money to buy your car or truck.
Absolutely. Would you say that when talking about AiDEN specifically,
Yep.
so AiDEN seems to be balancing two main goals, right? Making money from in-car services and protecting drivers and their privacy. How can you successfully do both?
I actually think you make more money from our approach. You are able to make use of connections better if you actually take the approach that we are going to inform people. So in the previous approach or the old approach or whatever we want to call it has been, we don't know how to deal with personal data, so we will either try to stay away from it or anonymize it, or we only take a little bit so that you don't notice, and then we try to do something with it, something that is valuable to whoever is receiving the data. Our approach is no, 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 be upfront, ask very clearly exactly what you want. And by doing that, you're kind of forcing whoever is receiving the data to actually provide some kind of incentive to the people in the car to connect and share their data. That way, you're kind of forcing some kind of value back. When we worked initially with an insurance company, they were all about, we're just going to receive the data and then that's going to be great for us. But when you force them to actually ask for the data, then they need to think about, well, what is it that we're giving back? And suddenly that is when you get services. That is when you really start to see a value. So you're kind of not only making it possible to get much better data because you're not anonymizing it or you're getting exactly what you need, but you're also kind of forcing yourself to provide something back. And if you don't ever provide something back, then it was pointless to start with, frankly.
Yes. So you've included both GDPR and CCPA compliances?
Yes, yes, that is true. Even though we always thought and still think that GDPR probably is the strictest privacy regulation, and for that reason, that was our North Star. We've taken the approach that whatever we do, we're focusing on GDPR compliance, and by doing that, we are pretty well covered globally from a privacy point of view, I think. Then And then really what we're trying to do is make sure that each party in the connected vehicle ecosystem or non-existent connected vehicle ecosystem are able to do what they need to do. So we make sure that the car companies can decide which services they want to offer in their vehicles. That's really what's important to car manufacturers. And we make sure that anyone trying to build a connected service can define and build and maintain and develop their service without being blocked or having any kind of dependency really with any of the auto manufacturers. So you can define exactly what you need from the vehicle and just build a great service. And most importantly, of course, letting people in the vehicle always decide what services they want to use, what they want to run, what data they actually are comfortable sharing and with whom, and for what specific purpose.
Yeah, so at this point, privacy has become a selling point, actually, not
For
just
sure.
a necessity, but a selling point.
Exactly.
The,
Somehow it was the realization. This was also before AiDEN, when we were just trying to connect and have a one-way flow of data from a vehicle to, for example, an insurance company, um, and we just built that very engineering driven. We solved the technical engineering problem of getting the data off of the vehicle to the third party, and then it was like an afterthought. Oh, the legal department are telling us that we need consent from the driver, and then there was no way of getting that consent. That was a realization that this is something you need to think about from the beginning if you're going to build a working solution really. And that's really what those were the things that we took into the foundation of AiDEN. It's actually in our bylaws, even as a company, that we will never ever contribute to any data being shared from a vehicle without whoever is in the vehicle always needs to know and be in control of that.
Niklas, I'd like to ask you something a bit more about the product itself.
Yep.
So what it means to the end users, what it means to OEMs. You described AiDEN as a services orchestration layer, right? For connected vehicles. What does that
Yeah.
actually look like to the driver? Like what happens when a person sits in an AiDEN powered car in the first 10 seconds? What can they achieve? What can they perceive? What can they see actually?
Well, it's kind of like apps on steroids. We're taking away a lot of the pain points with apps. You don't need to download, you don't need to install. You can very easily just activate or deactivate whatever services you want. You will always know exactly which kind of apps. It's an app-like experience, but with none of the pain points really. Um, and typical apps that, well, they're not in cars right now because it's so difficult or even impossible to build it as apps, are things related to when you need to find somewhere to park or pay for fuel or pay for charging or service your vehicle. I just recently had to change the oil in my car. I drive a Volkswagen right now, and got this warning message: time to change oil. And that's where it ends. That's the end of the interaction with the vehicle. After that, I need to start Googling and searching for workshops. And then they ask me, well, what kind of oil do you want? I don't know. And then they need to look up using the VIN number what oil they think my vehicle should have, which is just an insanely clunky experience. But I think we're still used to cars not being connected, so we're still accepting that every time you find a parking spot, the car has nothing to do with it. It's not helping you. Every time every day you need to charge or put fuel in your car, the car is never involved, which is frankly insane. This is 2025 and cars are at that level still. It's the same level as when I was born 50 years ago.
So you think this will change in the near future? Maybe in 2050, we won't be accepting this as the standard, but rather something new. Since,
We
as
are
you
changing
said,
it.
nothing's changed in this relationship between us as car owners and cars. Everything's the same for, let's say, 40 years.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. We are changing it now, and we are rolling out in production, mass scale production with a large global OEM later this year. And I think our bet is basically that as soon as more and more OEMs, more manufacturers will see these great services, they will realize that they need it as well. And there's no value. There's negative value in trying to build everything yourself. There's a lot of positive value in in the same way, I like to think, sometimes I use my computer as an example. Right now I'm using an HP computer. If this HP computer was limited to only running software built by HP, it would be a pretty crappy computer. It would be
Yeah.
kind of like what was sold in the 1980s. The fact that I can run software from anyone really on my computer is what makes it a good computer. The same will be true for cars. And then you will hear objections, which you've heard in every single industry through at least the last 100 years or something, where they will say, yes, but our industry is different. And it's not. And I mean, right now you see people thinking that cars are different from trucks and they are different from construction equipment. And that's why we need to redo the same electrical architecture basically over and over again, even though they're solving the exact same problem. They're not different. That's just a myth.
What would you say? Why is that? Like, are the OEMs scared? Are they just not up with the time? Are they just totally ignorant about the possible issue?
I don't know.
Or there's
I don't know how bold I can be in stating this, but um, they're certainly not changing, and to some degree, change is most of the time painful, or at least it requires energy. You need to put in energy to change. And for example, when I was at Volvo Cars, I, I s- I was one of the people starting Volvo's collaboration with Google on building what became the world's first Android-based infotainment systems. And when we started that whole project, there was a lot of resistance internally at Volvo. Um, so as an example, there was one team that was they were responsible for building Volvo's own navigation system. They were extremely upset. Why are you changing to Android? Are we going to have Google Maps in the car now? What are we going to do? Yes, we are going to have Google Maps in the car. And I don't know what you're going to do, but you're not going to keep building Volvo's navigation system. Of course, they're going to resist because they
Yeah.
didn't know. I think they all found new, much more relevant tasks to work on. And many of them actually ended up working with Google on Google Maps instead. Um, but in the same way, when I'm arguing that you should not do everything, well, right now there's going to be teams and departments and even units that need to change what they're doing. They will resist that. I think that might be one of the main reasons why change is slow.
Yeah. I,
But what
I,
do I?
I can understand this. It's we're as humans. I mean, we are naturally resistant to change. We want things to remain as they are for as long as possible. We don't want to make ourselves uncomfortable by challenging what we think is right now.
And to some degree, I think we get scared of change. It's similar to the AI hype that we see now, where for a while it was like, oh, every lawyer and doctor and all these jobs are just going to go away and be replaced by AI. Now I think gradually people are realizing, no, that's actually not going to happen. But AI is a great tool for doctors and lawyers and
Yep.
journalists and actually just before this meeting, I was reading in a Swedish newspaper a journalist writing um, a blog post about how how they're using AI and how she's now realizing that she won't be replaced by AI, but it's a great tool for her. She gets more done, um, and that's basically it. I think it's the same thing here with whenever you change stuff, it does not it just only means you will not be doing the exact same thing in the exact same way
Yeah.
forever. And to some degree, I would argue, isn't that great that you don't have to do the same thing
yeah,
in the same way forever?
absolutely, absolutely. So you mentioned partnering with Google, right? Volvo, and I want
Yes.
to ask you about your partners right now at AiDEN. We mentioned Haas Alert, we mentioned Here and Mavi. What advantages would you say these partnerships offered to AiDEN and
Well,
possibly you couldn't achieve by yourself?
yeah, they are just three examples of we actually work. We have more than 30 partners onboarded on our platform now. And they're three very good examples of three companies providing very different types of services to vehicles. Um, Obviously, Here Technologies, they're huge. They're one of the largest um, software suppliers in the automotive industry. They're providing especially map data. They know all about what's going on around the vehicle with mapping and traffic and information around the vehicle. Currently, mainly that information is mainly provided to drivers through built-in navigation systems, and we are together with Here working on additional, better, smarter ways in feeding information that is relevant to you as a driver, to you without a dependency necessarily on the built-in navigation system. Haas Alert is a company that is providing a great service, warning vehicles when there's emergency vehicles around you. So if there's an ambulance or a fire truck approaching or something, then you can get a warning about that. And you can even warn other vehicles in case you are stopped on the road with your hazard lights turned on. Then you can see that for example, I actually think they've integrated with Google Maps. I'm not 100% sure, but I think you actually in Google Maps or Waze can see then that, oh, here's a car that is parked on the roadside with, and obviously that's good for you and good for everyone else if you get
Yeah,
that warning.
Waze.
Yeah. And with Mavi, they have a great product, which is basically for in-vehicle commerce, for a way where you can order stuff from within your vehicle. Obviously, of course, you have to think about driver distraction and things like that. Um, and they do, but it's a way where you can, when you're in your vehicle, order food for you so that when you get there, it's ready for you when you arrive, instead of you having to sit and wait for 10 minutes in the drive-in lane or something.
So anyone who sits in an AiDEN-powered car can expect to be able to get insurance, to send out alerts, to order food, to do all these things
Yeah,
as a default, right from the
as
start.
exactly. I mean, it's all the things where you're currently, speaking of driver distraction, where people currently have to pick up their phones and fiddle around on their phones to get something done. All those things can happen and hap in the car and in a better way automatically, because the car will know when it's time to charge or when you need gas, and can then automatically suggest for you where you should go depending on your circumstances, where you're going and how you're driving and where you're typically what your typical behaviors are. And when you get to, let's say, the gas station, we're actually working on this right now with a partner. The user experience is basically you just drive up to the gas station, you put the vehicle in park, immediately, automatically, without having to find an app and start an app. You're just asked which pump to activate. You click one time to activate the pump, you go out, fill up with gas, get back into your car and drive off. And payment is managed seamlessly in the background, where it treats the vehicle as its own virtual credit card, basically. And that's just one example. Everybody needs to fill up with gas, if not every day, so probably every week at least or something.
Yeah.
Same thing with
Wait.
parking. Parking is another thing. That's my favorite terrible experience. And because there's no one good solution. And typically right now you have maybe 5 apps on your phone to manage parking in any one city. And I tend to go between California and Sweden. So I've got 5 apps for Gothenburg, 5 apps for San Francisco. And none of them actually are helping me find parking spots necessarily, because they don't know, because they don't actually communicate with cars. So they don't know where vehicles actually are parked. Typically. So I need to find the parking spot myself, and then I need to find the app to use to pay for the parking. With AiDEN, you can turn that around and instead actually automatically, because they know where the car is and they will know that I'm close to my destination, they can even suggest, oh, here's an empty spot, because since they communicate with the car, that means they will know where I park. And that way they, in the same way, can manage payment automatically in the background.
This is incredible. Like this is something we've been talking about internally in the company, how this is a one mobility solution. If we wanted to build one thing, it would be that for us to
Yeah.
see, okay, in our city, we currently have a small parking crisis, but that's off topic totally. And it's really becoming an issue to find an empty parking spot on a daily basis. And if I had an access to a service like this one, I don't know, my life would be like 3 times easier.
Yeah, I think I don't know how many times I've been going up to San Francisco for a meeting, and maybe the drive will take 45 minutes or maybe even an hour if traffic is bad. And then I spend another 30, 40 minutes circling the block in San Francisco trying to find somewhere to park. It's 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 bad for me, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for traffic, it's bad for everyone.
Yeah, so I
So
would say also one thing we covered in one of our blog posts, we covered the in-car payments, and from what we have researched, there is no good solution for in-car payments. Nobody has cracked the code really and done it properly, where you can, what you said, pay the gas from the car, why not? Or pay the parking from the car without the external app. I know Skoda tries something, but they kind of, Mercedes has some kind of a solution for that, but it's not really big scale yet.
yeah, yeah, I actually saw that Skoda had something. I saw that a couple
Yeah.
of months ago. I haven't tried it, so I don't want to say anything about it. I don't know any details about their solution. It looked pretty
Hmm.
cool.
Cool, yeah.
So far, the in-vehicle payment solutions have all been fairly, frankly, it's been the same problem as with all other services we've tried to build, which is there's been like a one-off integration. The same thing has been true with parking, and you get something working in one city or one place or with one brand of cars with one particular service, and then it never scales. And I think this is the in-vehicle payment solutions I've seen have all been fairly locked down, typically controlled by auto manufacturers or their suppliers. Um, and it's not something that anyone easily can use. I think that is really what is stopping that really to take off, because there's no way that any one entity can go and do a payment integration with every single parking company or every single charging or fueling or road tolling and so on. It just doesn't scale. Um, and that's why I think you need payment solutions that are not locking you down like that. And that is actually what we're offering. Of course, I'm advertising AiDEN here,
No, of
but
course.
Go
frankly
for
we
it.
are.
Yes.
I mean we're in enabling frankly any kind of payment solution. Um, so it's very easy for it doesn't have to be. I don't think there's any reason why the car should have one single payment solution for everything. That's not how your physical wallet works. I'm sure you have multiple cards. It's not how your virtual wallet on your phone works. You have multiple cards. And there's reasons for that. And that's because no one payment solution is covering everything. So obviously, if the car is going to work with payment, it probably needs to be something similar. And that's what we're enabling with AiDEN, really.
So is there an integration you wish to happen? Has happened yet? Something you like?
Um, there are so many more integrations to do. As I mentioned, we have 30 providers on our platform. The beauty with those integrations is that it's extremely simple for any third party to start using AiDEN. The whole point from the third party point of view is that we allow third parties to basically offer these app-like experience in the vehicle without having to write a single line of code. To them, the way we describe AiDEN is that it's a no-code app framework, privacy first. So we enforce. You actually don't need to think necessarily about um, consent and GDPR in the same way, because whatever you build and communicate with the vehicle, we automatically generate a consent request in the vehicle so that you can know what data is being communicated as the driver, and as the service provider, you will know that whatever was received was always explicitly consented to. You get only what you've you get exactly what you've asked for, and only if it was consented to by the driver or the owner of the vehicle or whoever is in the vehicle, frankly. Because that's another thing. We make sure that those questions are always surfaced in the vehicle. If you ask for consent on any other surface, then we don't think that is sufficient. Once again, like the car I'm driving right now, it's sharing its location because I agreed to it, but my son didn't, my wife didn't,
Yeah.
and they actually don't even know that it's connected and sharing its location with.
They may
Uh,
know if they watch this interview.
yeah, no, I mean that's the thing. Cars are shared devices. So you can't deal with consent in the same way that you deal with it on phones, where it might be okay to just say we ask you one time and you can answer when you set up the setup wizard. But I mean, if I were to borrow my phone to you, um, I actually could track you because I know the location on my phone. And yeah,
Definitely understood about this, and we completely agree. I can say for myself, the privacy is a huge issue and definitely something you managed to capitalize on. And moving on, I'd like to ask you something a bit more about the focus of the company, about the recent funding, and where are your biggest bets? Like with 6.1 million raised recently, where are you placing your biggest bets? Is it the tech, the talent, or some strategic distribution? Anything that may provide us maybe more insight into how are you managing to grow AiDEN beyond this point?
our top priority right now is to roll out. We have a handful of services that we are deploying in the next couple of months. And I can't tell you more about exactly which services and with whom, but it's a mix of services that we've talked about already, basically, or similar. And that's our top priority. That's the main focus. Um, our second priority is then to launch as many of those services as possible with as many other auto manufacturers as possible, basically. That's really what we're doing. Um, and now our bet is we've known that the automotive industry is not really fast in changing. The first mover is never really moving quickly. However, it's actually quite fast in following others. And that is our bet, really, that the rest of the industry, we have now a great first, well, we're working with multiple OEMs, but there's one in particular that we've gotten the furthest with, and now are about to deploy to mass scale production with. Our bet is that the others will follow fast. That's what happened with, if you think about like electric vehicles, none of the big OEMs were putting any significant effort into EVs until Tesla came along.
Yeah.
And suddenly they all switched fairly quickly. And frankly, actually, the same thing with Android. When I was with Volvo Cars, we started that project basically in 2016, end of 2016, and announced it in 2017. And there was no interest from anyone else basically in the industry. And just 2 years later, pretty much everyone had shifted their strategy, and all the other companies were building Android-based systems. So Volvo launched the first ones in 2020, and now almost all car companies are only building Android-based infotainment systems. So that was a shift that happened quickly. Our bet is that we will do the same thing with AiDEN when the whole industry will start to see these great services finally coming to life in vehicles. They will want them. That's our bet,
Yeah,
and that's
that
what we're using our funds to do,
I mean,
really.
by listening to you, I would definitely agree. I mean, during this call you solved several huge problems with some AiDEN selling points. Definitely, if someone would provide me AiDEN services, I mean, if I could sit in my car, if I could do all these things right from the start, know where to park, just be able to pay my insurance, order my food, all while sitting in the car or maybe waiting at a red light. this is something, I mean, the moment, as you mentioned, you're rolling out with a big OEM this year. I mean, I hope all that it takes for a global adoption are the case studies and some success stories from drivers around the world, because it
I
seems you're solving not just one issue, but several big issues we all have, actually.
thank you. I hope so too. And and frankly, to adopt our platform as an OEM, as an auto manufacturer is very, very simple. All you need to do is just install our software in your Android system. And so far, we've installed with 8 different OEMs, and it's never taken more than a couple of hours the very first time, even to get it working. And then, of course, you can put effort into white labeling it or make it fit your particular system user interface. But it's not. It's a very low hanging fruit. It's a very simple lift for the auto manufacturer. So we've been very conscious about trying to, because I'm actually going to go back to one of the main reasons why we don't see the same thing happening in cars as in phones with app stores and so on. One main reason is actually one of scale, where in the phone industry you can build an app and you can get it distributed to hundreds of millions of phones, and that way you can actually make money from the effort you put into building the app. There's no car manufacturer with hundreds of millions of vehicles on the roads. It's a very fragmented industry. The biggest ones are producing around 10 million cars a year. Those are the giants. And even with, if you were to say, I built an app and the maximum I can do is sell it to 10 million cars, suddenly that puts really strict limits on how much resources you can put into that development. And that's why you rarely see anything working with apps. With AiDEN, what you can do in months or even years with apps, you can do within just a couple of days. Actually, our record was with Mavi, which I mentioned before. We were at a conference with them, and they were going to showcase their app running in a car, and for some reason their car wasn't working, and the demo was starting in 2 hours, and we onboarded them to our platform and ran the demo in our car instead 2 hours later. So the onboarding and the whole development cycle there was 2 hours. We've built services where to build an app-based version, companies have spent years, literally years. We built the same thing in 2 days because it's that simple. It's basically just configuring really what you want to communicate. And then, of course, you need to build. We're pushing the development to your own backend as a service provider. Now I'm going into maybe too much technical detail. I tend to do that. Sorry.
I think people will love to hear this, because this is a huge product coming to the global market very soon, and I think you'll have a lot of interested folks after this
Thank you.
interview.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about the future of connected cars. Is there something that right now seems impossible, but you, as a connected cars expert, can see happen in the next few years, or you can achieve with Aiden in the near future?
Um, yes. Right now, actually, and for a couple of years, I've thought that public charging is impossible to solve for electric vehicles. Um, and I think that with AiDEN, you can solve it, and you can solve it differently to how it's approached currently. Because the problem with charging is, of course, that most people with EVs tend to start, if they're going on a long trip and they are going to be reliant upon public charging, they tend to start the trip with a full charge, which means that, and you saw this in Sweden this year when everybody were going up to the mountains in winter, they're going to the same place. That means they need to charge in the same place. And that might be somewhere where not a lot of people live. And that's like for 1 week of the year, suddenly you need charging for tens of thousands of vehicles in the middle of rural Sweden. Same thing happens here in California. People in the Bay Area are going to Tahoe for skiing, and suddenly they have tens of thousands of vehicles that need to charge in the same location. And the problem there is, of course, that we're approaching it the same way as we approach gas infrastructure. We think that we'll build gas stations and charging stations in the same way in location. That just cannot work. There's no way that we ever can have like the electrical, just the cable to the middle of nowhere for a charging station that's going to be active for a couple of weeks or months every year. With AiDEN, you can turn that around and instead let the charging companies, instead of you having to figure out where to go, they can communicate with all the vehicles, know the charging state of all the vehicles, and it's their responsibility to figure out where every single vehicle should charge. And that way you can spread it out along the route instead of having to concentrate charging into one big location where everybody needs to go. You can just have smaller charging stations, and that way you can balance the load on the infrastructure and the power grid. That is an example of something which I cannot imagine how to solve it without them actually communicating with vehicles. And that's actually how I would like charging to be that way, where it's not my job to figure out where to charge. It's whoever I'm paying like a charging subscription for. I would love parking to work that way as well, by the way. It's not my job to find a parking spot. If you're a parking company, I'm paying you to tell me where to park. That's really what I think the end goal should be here.
A really interesting approach. Yeah, absolutely. Sounds something that can solve a lot of problems.
Yes, suddenly
Yeah.
then I'm paying for something that actually has a value. Right now
Yeah,
with parking is just like, oh, I'm doing all the job, all the work here, and then paying for what? Just for a few square feet or square
Yeah.
meters of of space? Come on, give me the service of telling me where to park.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what
Exactly.
missing the modern world. I think it's the number one issue, at least for me. At least for me, I'm speaking for myself here. Uh,
Yeah, for me too. Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Likewise.
I'd
mean,
like to ask you something about the future, not the future in general, but the future of AiDEN. What's your next major milestone? Something that you're maybe excited or nervous to launch that's
well,
coming
the
maybe
next major
5.
milestone is mass scale production. That is the next, and everything's looking great right now. But I've realized that I get more and more nervous the better it goes, for some reason. So my level of nervousness is through the roof. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I can survive that, but we'll see. That's the next major milestone, and after that, of course, deploying with more car manufacturers will be the second major milestone. And we expect to do both those things within this year.
I
So it's going to be an
hope
interesting
that's
year.
gonna happen. I hope that's
Fingers
gonna happen.
I
crossed.
hope so too.
See it in
Thank you
my
so much
car.
for
Fingers
your
crossed.
yes.
I'd like to ask you if AiDEN scales the way you envision it, what will disappear from the current driving experience,
The
and what
pain, the
maybe gets
hassle.
dramatically better?
Yeah, I mean, it's what what will disappear is the need to be reliant on your phone or on yourself even. Um, every you will just like taking away frustration is really what it is. Taking away pain and frustration from the in-vehicle experience. Being able to service your vehicle and insure your vehicle and park your vehicle without having to always rely on searching for stuff on your phone, basically.
Yeah,
Um, because right now, every single step there is done in the same way that it would have been done in a car built 1970. Doesn't matter if it's built 1970 or 2025. The steps are the same right now, which is ridiculous, frankly.
what do you think, what is the biggest risk right now? Something that, what could break if not handled right? Is there
Uh,
anything you think is pretty risky currently?
I I'm sure there can be delays and things like that. Um, but this is going to happen regardless. And And of course, for AiDEN, there's a risk that maybe someone else comes up and does it better and faster and are more successful, and that's sad for AiDEN, and I would, of course, find that bad. But for the industry, someone is going to do what we are doing, and we, of course, think and hope that it's going to be us. But if it's not, then it's going to be someone else. This is going to happen. It just has to. There is no way around it, because it's just about the fact that this is doable. We are proving that we can solve it. Okay, so it's possible to solve, and once one manufacturer starts actually doing it, the others are kind of forced to follow. That is really the way I see it, because it will be increasingly difficult to keep offering no real services, nothing of value when your competitors are, right?
Yeah.
Well, I
So
hope you
Yeah.
do get heard by those OEMs. That's why we're doing this. I hope the word does spread and that they realize that this is the right way to go. Right,
I hope
Philip?
so too. And I frankly, I see over the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen such a shift in the industry in terms of, um, even though I started off complaining about a lot of things in the auto industry and how it's slow and how things need to change and change faster, there's still change, to be clear. And I think it's gradually becoming clear to more and more people within the auto manufacturers that they need to change the way they approach these things. And then, of course, still you see some, yeah. To end on a positive note, I actually do see some level of change, and the culture is changing as well.
Well, yeah, future ahead then. We just wanted to kind of close the interview with a few rapid quick fire questions for you.
Okay.
So I would like to start with what is the most underrated tech trend in automotive space right now, in your opinion?
Most unrated?
Underrated,
Underrated.
yes.
I don't know if it's the most underrated, but I think hybrid cars with very small combustion engines is something that is I find really interesting. It used to be that hybrids had huge combustion engines and very small electric engines, which doesn't
Hmm.
make much sense.
Yeah,
Now with the combustion engine that just is there to help charge the battery, because it actually alleviates a lot of the pain points with public charging and the worry about, uh, what's it called, charge anxiety.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
This is it's a simple thing, but I actually find that really interesting.
yeah, awesome. Is there a service you personally want in your car? In every car?
Yes, parking for me is definitely one of the main ones. But well, I think I've talked about all the main services already. It's paying for fuel, and then occasionally when you need to actually change oil in your car or service your car, or I actually had to change tires on my car not too long ago, which was the same thing. I have no idea what tires I have. Then I need to call and they need to look up what tires I have, and in Sweden, of course, you change tires at least twice every year because you go from summer to winter tires. Um, and that's also something that should be done from the car, because the car knows what car it is
Hmm.
and knows what tires it needs, and all that.
Awesome. And the last one is the option of three. So, what's, in your opinion, most important long term? User experience, data trust, or platform reach?
I think user experience, because user experience encompasses all of that to some degree.
Hmm.
Um, but and that is what I think we need more. That when I said 40 minutes ago something about product focus instead of platform focus, I think that is what I mean. User experience is the only thing that matters in the end, and to me, a good approach to privacy and data management is part of a user experience. Really, an essential part even.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you. Thank us. I think we've gone through. I think we exhausted all of our questions, all of our
yeah.
all questions and sub questions we had
That's good.
noted.
I've exhausted all my answers, so that's good.
Okay, so it was well timed. So that's a wrap on today's conversation, and it was a fascinating conversation. Thank you for everything you shared with us. Once
Thank
more,
you.
huge thanks to Niclas, huge thanks to the team at AiDEN for sharing not what you're building, but why it matters and why you're building it. And as cars become more smarter, more connected, more personalized, platforms like AiDEN will force the industry to confront one key question. Can we create a smarter vehicle experience without sacrificing on ownership, security, that is privacy, or trust? If you're tracking the connected vehicle space, if you're interested in this from low code service orchestration, check out AiDEN. AiDEN is showing that a privacy first approach is good and it's a selling point, not just a checkbox to tick. And what could the OEM empowering future could look like actually? We'll be back soon in a few days, maybe a week or two, with some more bold ideas and some innovators who are reshaping mobility right now. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and keep charging ahead.
Thank you very much, Philip. Thank you, Marin. Very nice